Good evening. How are you this evening? Welcome to our latest webinar series. And this evening we're going to be looking at speaking, and we're going to be looking at fluency and how we can improve our fluency in order to get a good IELTS speaking test score. So let me start by sharing my screen with you for just a moment. Okay, oops, get that out of the way. Okay, great. Here we are. So by way of introduction, so the IELTS speaking test, we have these 4 criteria that I'm sure you are already familiar with: fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and pronunciation, each worth 25%. So fluency and coherence is worth 25% of your mark. Now, what is fluency and coherence? Fluency is the ability to speak without long and unnatural pauses or repeating yourself, saying the same thing over and over again. So it's a very important skill and something we want to develop. Coherence is slightly different. It's the ability to link and organize your ideas in a way that makes it clear to the examiner or to the person you are talking to what you're trying to say. It's an organizational thing. Now, let's a little note: a fluent English speaker will speak at a rate of about 150 words per minute, which may sound pretty quick to you, but that in fact is what a fluent speaker speaks. So the key points here: to sound fluent, we need to be able to keep talking and not have any pauses to find words. We don't want these long gaps while we try and think of the word that we're trying to say, like what I'm doing now. So we also need to talk about things without saying the same thing over and over. And this is that paraphrasing skill that we talk about so often in IELTS. The ability to use different words to say the same thing or something slightly different. Okay? All right. Let's have a look at a band 9, which is, of course, the highest score you can get, but something that you might one day hope to reach. Now, it says speaks fluently with only rare repetition or self-correction. So these are the things they're looking out for: repetition and self-correction. We really don't want to be doing that at all, if possible. Okay? Now, the next one: any hesitation is content related rather than to find words or grammar. So when we do pause, it's not because we're looking for the word, but it's because we're thinking of the idea that we're trying to develop. It's a little bit different. Now, speaks coherently with fully appropriate cohesive features. This is that joining together of your ideas with those linking words that I have talked about and I will talk about a little bit later with you. And finally, develops topics fully and appropriately. So it's this idea of expanding on things and talking about things. So how do we learn to be fluent? We need to learn to talk about things at length, which means we need to be able to keep talking. And this is something that comes with practice, okay? We also need to use those linking words to develop our ideas. They are sometimes called discourse markers, and they are very important for our coherence and our cohesion. It's the same in writing. We also need to use pronouns like who, which, where, and that to describe things. These are these relative clauses that are very common in spoken English when we describe things, when we describe people. Let's have a little example here of a few different levels of speaking. So the question, the prompt, tell me about your family. Okay, this is a very common prompt you'll find early on in part 1 of your IELTS speaking tests. Very, very common. So first one, there are 3 people in my family: my mother, my father, and me. My mother is a teacher, my father is a doctor, and I am a student. Now, it's grammatically correct. The sentence structure is very short, very simple, but it is just not enough. And we need to get way past this point to start expanding. So let's have a look at the second one. It's fairly similar. I'm happy to talk about my family. My father lives in Brazil and he's a doctor at a hospital. He works very hard and loves football. My mother works as a teacher in a small school in my hometown. Here, a bit more information, not a lot, but certainly we're trying to expand and talk a little bit more at length. Finally, the third one, unfortunately, I haven't seen my family since I came here, but I speak to them often on the phone. I suppose I should talk about my father first because he is the head of the household and I miss him a lot. At the moment, he's working in a small hospital that's located in the centre of town. However, my mum isn't living with us at the moment because she has been looking after her sister in another nearby town. So here we have a lot more information. We have a story, we have some different tenses, and this is what we're talking about when we say at length, okay? Now, what is really going on here in this third passage? What we have are these linking words that really drive the story forward. So we start with unfortunately, which sets the mood, the attitude, a little bit of sadness, perhaps some disappointment. And then I haven't seen my family since I came here, a nice linking word, and then but I speak to them often on the phone. Then I suppose, now this is a very informal word that is not used in writing or in reading, but it's certainly common in speaking. And then we have because, of course, which gives us the reason for something. And then we have and, a nice simple word there. And then at the moment to bring us to this time. And then we have that. And then a contrast with however, my mum isn't living with us at the moment because. So we really have a range of these linking words to keep the story going. And that is really the difference between the second and the third answer. And the key here is to use a range of linking words. We don't really want to use the same ones over again. Now, it's not about using a lot of big words here. And it's not about these descriptive words and descriptive passages. My father is tall and handsome with black hair and he likes to wear, business shirts and nice pants. It's not this descriptive thing that we are looking for when we talk at length. It's more about these discourse markers and these linking words that allow us to go in different directions with our story and push it into different sides. And of course, it's being able to talk or keep talking without repeating yourself. Example 2 here, a little bit different. What do you like to do in your free time? Another very common question. First answer, in my free time, I like to go to the beach with my friends. Sometimes I like to go to restaurants with my flatmates and go for a drink. I also like to watch TV when I have time. I like weekends the most. So here we have a lot of repetition. I like, I like, I like, I like. Now this is great when you're learning some grammatical structure. I like, I like, I like. You're learning how to use I like. But when we're doing an IELTS test, we need a lot more range than that. So we don't want to repeat like this. The second example, when I have free time, I enjoy going to the beach and playing football with my mates. Usually we go to the park and play on the weekends when the weather is nice and sunny. The best thing is going to the pub and drinking some beer, but I don't have much time for that these days. I would like to go out more, but I don't have money. So this is a lot more expansive. We're talking about playing football, we're talking about money, talking about the pub, and we have these linking words to make the story fit together. When is a very useful word and really helps you to bring ideas together in a simple way. And then we have but, we have and we have I would like to, and then a little phrase, the best thing is. So it's a little bit better, more words, but we can do better than that. Now let's have a look at one more example here. To be honest, I'm not really a weekend person. So I guess I don't really go out much these days. In fact, I can't even remember the last time I went out to a bar or nightclub for a drink. It's been that long since I went out. Whereas most of my friends from school love to party and blow their money on alcohol and trying to meet girls, which I happen to think is a complete waste of time. But who am I to judge? Now here we have a much greater range of discourse markers. So we are able to go to a lot more places. To be honest, in fact, whereas, which is a bit of contrast, we have since for time, we have so for giving the reason, we have for, we have but. So these little phrases allow you to really develop your story. And that's what it's all about. There's not a great deal of describing words there, and not a lot of adjectives, but I am talking at length. Okay. Now, with these discourse markers that I did mention before, and we will talk about more, they work in different ways. We need to not use the same kind of discourse markers all the time, because then it sounds kind of odd or kind of strange. So let's have a little look at this example I've given you here. It says, although I'm not a weekend person, many of my friends are. Instead of going out to nightclubs, I like to stay home and read books. In contrast, my school friends spend most of their money on drinking and going to parties, which seems silly. On the other hand, I almost never go to parties and would prefer to go out to dinner. Despite this, I like my friends a lot, even if we're very different in some ways. So this is good. Clearly, there's a lot of linking words that are highlighted in yellow, but all of them are contrasting linking words. And so it's a slightly odd way of talking. It's like a compare and contrast essay. We want to use these linking words from different groups. Now here we have some, not all, but some of the more important discourse markers. And these are the words that you really want to become familiar with and you really want to practice in both your writing and your speaking. They are very important. So we have the contrasting discourse markers there, as you can see, and those were the ones that I just used. We have comparing discourse markers, which are there for you to have a look at. Then we have the opinion linking words, and these are very important because these allow us to express our opinion, and in most cases we like to express our opinion. So you will find these discourse markers are in fact the most widely used of all the discourse markers, and perhaps the most important in some way. And you can use them in all kinds of different situations, and they're very, very important. Then we have adding information, which is also quite a nice one. It's just another way of saying and, but a little bit more sophisticated. And this kind of linking word gives you time to think. So as you say, another thing that comes to mind, and as you say that, you can be thinking about what it is you want to say next. And so it becomes quite a useful little phrase. Then we have sequencing. Now, sequencing is something you find a little bit more in diagrams. It's slightly formal and it's quite instructive, such as being a teacher. So if I say, what do you like to do on the weekend? Most people would not say, well, firstly, I like to wake up and have breakfast. And after that, I like to go to the park. And thirdly, I usually visit my friend and we have lunch. Fourthly, it just doesn't happen. Okay. So this sequencing is something a little bit formal and something you will find in your essays and in your diagrams, perhaps, but less so in a speaking test, except if you are explaining something to someone. Giving examples, well, that's always useful. Giving examples, tremendously important when you write your essays, and giving examples is great when you are trying to explain an idea. So they are useful. Then we have the result linking words. These are important as a result, because of this, therefore, and you are explaining again through some kind of logic. And the last one we've got there is generalizing, making a general statement about something. And this is a nice way to introduce things before you get into giving examples and explaining how it works, or perhaps giving a specific story. So generalizing usually comes at the beginning of when you start to talk about something. Now, you do not need to learn all of these linking phrases. Of course, if you can, that's fantastic. But you do need to learn some from each of the different groups. That way you have some diversity. When you speak, you have some flexibility, and this is very important to sound natural. Of course, you must learn the grammar rules associated with using these different phrases. Sometimes they have tricky little rules about what needs to follow, if it's an ing, if it's a gerund, if it's to, many, many different little rules. And of course, you don't want to use the same linking words over and over again. You might love the word however, but don't use it all the time. You might like but. Well, let's try and think of some other words on the other hand, or whatever. Now, a little speaking practice here. If you want to work on your linking phrases, and in speaking, we're trying to develop some speed. So what we can do is we can have these linking phrases as cards on our desk or in front of us or wherever, and then we can have a topic. So we've got some cards with topics, and we have some cards with linking words. Let's say the topic is music, and the linking word is on the whole. I pick up each and I make a sentence. On the whole, I find pop music rather boring these days. The idea is to be able to make a sentence quickly with these two prompts, these two cues. And this is exactly what happens in an IELTS speaking test, except in a slightly different way. You're given a question, you're given a cue, and you need to start talking. Now, we can make that game slightly more difficult or more challenging by choosing one topic, again, money or whatever, and having 3 linking words. So here I've got unfortunately, for example, and also, and I want to use all 3 linking words talking about money. My answer, unfortunately, I have not got enough money to buy a house at the moment. For example, a house in Sydney might cost $2 million, and also apartments are very expensive. So I have used the 3 linking words and I have talked about money. And these linking words come from different groups. They are not all the same, and we want to be able to use different linking words. Now, the purpose of this game is to think on your feet, which means to think quickly and to speak as quickly as possible. If you take more than 3 seconds to use a linking word, well, move on. It's the next person's turn. Speed is something we want to get used to. Confidence using these linking words and phrases will happen once you start practicing this skill more and more. And really, these linking words are the key to enable you to speak for longer, at length. And that's what you're trying to do. Now, a couple of points about how to speak longer. Some people are naturally talkative and others are quiet. And to talk freely and fluently, we need to learn how to silence our critical mind, the part of our brain that is watching us and judging us and telling us, oh, that's wrong. You made a mistake. Don't say that. You need to change that. Don't say that's wrong. This voice in your head is a critic. This voice can help you when you're learning and when you're studying to improve your accuracy. But there comes a time when you need to ignore this voice completely and simply talk. And that's very important. If we have the habit of only saying things we are sure are grammatically correct, we will never be able to speak fluently. We need to take a risk. We need to make some mistakes. Now, speaking is a high-speed activity which involves running with language, not walking. The biggest problem many students have with regard to fluency is the result of spending too much time reading, writing, and doing grammar exercises. Now, although these exercises help us to understand the rules of grammar and how to write better, they do not assist us in improving our speaking skill because it's a very different process. So we need to do something different. The best way to improve speaking is by talking to people in English. Or if you can't do that, by listening to other people's conversations in a natural setting, by listening to people talking. Because speaking and listening are closely connected skills that are processed in a similar area of the brain. They really go together. If you're a good listener, you're usually a good speaker. If you're a good speaker, you're normally a good listener. They work together. Now, as you probably know, YouTube is filled with material that will help you speak better. And of course, podcasts these days are also a great way to listen to English being spoken in a natural setting through some dialogue, some interviews, and conversations. Now, another very simple speaking drill, if you don't have anyone to talk to and you would like to practice your speaking and build some fluency, is to take one word and try and make as many different sentences with that word as you can in the shortest amount of time. So I've given the word there of house, and I'm going to say, I don't like my house. She is moving house next week. I have never been to my friend's house. The house next door was up for sale. I will move to a new house next week, and nobody was living in the house when I moved in. These sentences are short, and that's fine. The purpose of this is to create sentences that have different tenses and different grammatical structure, using the same word and doing it quickly. So this will improve your grammar. It will sharpen your grammar, but it will make you more flexible, and you'll be able to change these sentences in different tenses. And this flexibility is a core skill of being able to speak fluently in English. Okay, so moving on then. Now, the purpose of that speaking drill, as I said, is to build some speed and flexibility. Let's have a look at IELTS Band 7, which for some of you is a more realistic goal. So here it says, speaks at length without noticeable effort or loss of coherence. So again, it's this speaking at length and without effort. It should appear easy and comfortable. And no loss of coherence. It's logical. It makes sense. May demonstrate language-related hesitation at times. This means trying to find the right word, and some repetition and or self-correction. So a little bit of repetition and a little bit of self-correction. We don't want to do that. That's something we are trying not to do in our speaking and also in our writing. And then uses a range of connectives and discourse markers with some flexibility. Those are the words that we previously discussed. Now, other practice we can have, well, the best practice is real life conversation about topics that you may encounter in the test. Of course, when you do this, it should be structured so that you can later listen to what you've done and identify your mistakes either in grammar or in your vocabulary, pronunciation, or perhaps in your repetition or in your linking words. You want to be able to look, or rather to listen to what you have said and find ways to make it better. This is an important tool, and we have smartphones that can allow us to do that. We can record ourselves quite easily these days, which is great. Now, if you don't do that, there's a risk that you might start making some systematic mistakes in your speaking, some grammar mistake or using a word in the wrong way, which, if it becomes embedded, if you do it for too long, it can be a little bit difficult to fix. So we don't want to develop some bad habits that we can't undo later. So let's just sum up for now about fluency and coherence. So finally, fluency is about speaking at length and without much effort. So it should be reasonably easy. Coherence is about using the linking words that I mentioned to create a flow of ideas and organization to what you're saying. To speak at length normally requires a flexible use of these linking words and phrases. They really are a key to being fluent. Number 4, it's essential to avoid repetition by using paraphrase. We really must be conscious of repetition in our writing and in our speaking. We must hear ourselves and go, I've said that word 3 times, 4 times. Any significant pause in speaking will likely result in a lowering of your mark. So we need to try and avoid these pauses, and if necessary, we can learn some discourse markers, some linking words that give us time to think about what we're going to say next. As I said before, the discourse markers need to be used flexibly. Now, number 7 is too much self-correction or grammar focus will inhibit your speed and fluency. If you are too self-conscious and too worried about being right, then you will slow down and you will self-correct too much. There is a time to put the critical voice away and forget about it. Too much focus on reading, writing, and grammar can make speaking harder. Now, to gain confidence in speaking, you really need to speak as much as possible in social situations, in front of other people, with other people. This is a confidence-building exercise. It may feel a bit awkward, it might feel uncomfortable, but you need to get used to it. As I said before, recording your speaking is a great way to identify some of your errors and try to fix them before they become embedded in your speech, before they become a bad habit. So listen to yourself, find the things you're getting wrong, remove them early, and move on. There are many drills and games to play to build speed and fluency. Many of them are built around grabbing a word, grabbing a linking phrase, and making it a sentence as quickly as you can. or making 2 sentences or 3. And you make them out loud by speaking. Now, speaking and listening are closely connected skills and in many ways should be practiced together. And that's why conversation is a great learning tool. To build speed and fluency, you should listen to English spoken at natural speed as much as possible. So YouTube videos are great, films, TV shows, podcasts. There is so much material out there to listen to. When you do listen to it, it's always a good idea to try and go back and listen to it again a few more times to catch the things you missed and to hear those linking sounds and all those little bits. That way you're learning more. And of course, finally, the more you speak, the more your confidence will grow. So don't be afraid and don't be shy. Thank you very much and good luck with your speaking. And I hope you find someone interesting to talk to or some interesting conversations to have.